Welcome to the Plan to Eat podcast, where I have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you save time in the kitchen, reduce your grocery bill, stress less about food, and delight in dinner time. Hello, and welcome back to the Plan to Eat podcast. Today, I have a wonderful interview with Julien and Kiersten Sanders. They are the authors of a book called Cashing Out. They also have a podcast called Rich and Regular. They are personal finance experts, and they spend a lot of time talking about money and helping people reimagine their personal finances. So I got to talk to Julien and Kiersten today a little bit about their personal finance philosophy, but mostly we talk about meal planning and cooking at home and all of the benefits that we get from cooking at home. Julien has a lot of culinary experience himself, so he has some great tips and advice in here. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview and learn a lot from them. So without further ado, here's my interview with Julien and Kiersten. Julien, Kiersten, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Let's just get started by having you guys say who you are and what you do.
All right. I normally let Kiersten do this, but I'll take the first shot. I'm Julien. This is Kiersten. We are married. We live in Atlanta, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. We are the authors of Cashing Out When the Wealth Came by Walking Away. We're also financial educators, speakers, and podcasters. We have a podcast called the Rich and Regular Podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. Food is a big part of what we do. And so this is one of those intersections of our work and our life that we're excited to talk about because we don't get to talk about it enough.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about it. You guys have a really great podcast that came out earlier in the year about your different gadgets and stuff that you use in the kitchen that I found so fascinating because some of the tips that you guys gave are not things that I would normally think of. So I think we're going to probably have a lot of those in today's discussion as well. Before we get talking about food, though, I'm kind of curious how you got started in the financial space. What made you decide to write a book and to start a podcast about finances?
Yeah, it really sparks from our own life. Julien has always had an interest in personal finance. I have always liked money, but mostly the spending side, not necessarily the saving and investing side, and the earning side too. So when we met, Julien had a plan for his financial future, and he was really focused on it. And I had just gotten the big job, like the job that you wait for was like, wow, by the time I get that job, I'm going to have everything I want. And so I was ready to party. I was ready to spend, go on vacations, buy all the things that I hadn't wanted. But we had this clash about credit card debt, and it really sparked a deeper conversation around the role that we wanted finances to play in our lives. And as we got more immersed into the personal finance space online, we got excited. Like this was back when blogs were just starting, YouTube was just starting. And so we would get excited and share all this stuff with our friends on Facebook, and it would be like crickets. Like no one was responding, no one was interested. And we realized that it was just because they didn't connect with the messenger. At the time, a lot of the people who were writing about finance were software engineers on the West Coast. They were white, they were male, they made $300,000. And it was just something that, our people couldn't relate to. And so that's how we decided to start writing about our own journey, to prove that this was possible, to prove that it's accessible at most income levels, and to show them examples of how we actually budget and live within our means in real life.
That's great. I love that you saw the need in your own community and you decided you guys were going to be the people to take on that space. That's so cool. Do you mind me asking, what was your awesome corporate job that you loved and then left?
Yeah, it was a role in marketing. It was like a business development role. I guess today it would be similar to a product manager, but I was basically responsible for marketing cool stuff to hotels.
Yeah, that's actually how we met. We met because we started on the same team on the same day.
Yeah.
And so I was on a different wing of the team. She was on the other wing. I was a multi-channel marketing manager, and same vibe. Like this was the big job. This is the one that you believe is going to solve all your problems. Right. And for a while it did. But I think after that little clash that we had, and to her point, we realized that there's something more about this moment in our lives, especially after we realized that so many people that we knew were also getting the big jobs, but making very different decisions with their money. And we were really intrigued by that. And so since we were walking together down this path as we started this year, we realized that some people needed some help and that we were a bit more advanced than others. And we just wanted to find a creative way to draw people in and hopefully inspire them to think differently about the way they manage their money.
Yeah. Can you give me kind of the general overview of what your financial philosophy is?
Yeah. I mean, I think, in as few words as possible, it's keep it simple. Make sure that you have a clear understanding of the money that's coming in and out of your home. Fight lifestyle inflation, which is this
Mm.
urge to spend more as you earn more. And I think to believe that while it is beautiful and great to be a hard worker and to have a strong work ethic, none of us can actually work harder than our money can work for us. And we
Mm.
should, to a certain extent, start designing our lives around that so that we free ourselves from required labor, from having to work for money. Because eventually, if you are investing wisely and you're clear on what you're trying to achieve, your money starts to generate returns and out earns your ability to stay employed at a certain level. And
Mhm.
that is the goal. That is a tactic, or I would say a core group of values that is central to the FIRE movement, which is what drew us to personal finance and certainly to share our message. Ours just seems to be, I think, a little bit more culturally relevant, dare I say, one that's a bit more willing to combat this culture of work obsession that I think we have
Mhm.
here in America, and one that is not afraid to look at those issues at where they intersect with other issues like social justice issues and sustainability issues, racial issues, things of that nature. And so we're all about inspiring better conversations about money, which ultimately is about expanding it from what is, how to, and talking more about the why. Why do we accept this? Why do we think about it this way? Why do we continue to do these things when they ultimately work against these other things that we say are so important to us?
Mm. I really love that. It makes me think of kind of the idea of like the work-life balance that is so popular. But at the same time, there's a conflicting value in our society that if you're not actually working, but you're making money, you shouldn't like deserve to make that money. It's a very
Mhm.
interesting conflicting values that we have of like protect your time, but also work harder and be more productive.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's basically where we are, like, as a country, is battle of the narratives. Where does work fit into our lives? And as generations continue to erode and grow and level out, it's really just gonna be a battle of stamina. Like, if Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are even younger than them, our sons' age, have a totally different understanding of how money is earned, at what point in your life, how much time you have to dedicate in a week to earning it, then that's the nature, like, that's just how change happens. So it's a waiting game, but we know that what's happening right now is not sustainable. It's
Mhm.
broken.
And I also say this, not to force a segue, because I am eager to talk about food and meal planning and those things. But the first thing that I said, I believe I said, was keeping it simple.
Mhm.
And I know when on our personal financial journey, it feels as if money and managing money and investing was far simpler than it was or than it is now. Like
Mm.
so much has changed just in the last 10 years, especially with respect to technology, but there are new currencies and new ways to invest and all kinds of things that just did not exist. Certainly when I first started learning about money, and certainly not when we met, which was a little bit over 10 years ago. And the reason why I bring that up is because while so much has changed, fundamentally, I still believe that learning how to cook is likely one of the best financial decisions that you will ever make. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Unfortunately, if you run down the lists of, on the internet of things that you can do to make money or save money, like that is one of the things that I think far too many people just accept is
Ignore.
just not going to be the case. Like
Mm.
it's not an option for me because I'm a busy professional or I'm a busy and working parent, or it's easy for you to say because you used to be employed in the restaurant industry and you're classically trained. But I think I am just far more willing, not just because of my own skill and taste preferences, but having had thousands of conversations with people about money, you start to identify some patterns. And I think the people who invest in learning how to cook is one of those gifts that just keeps on giving. And it has so many benefits in your relationship and your health, but without question in your financial life. And so, I want more of us to not overlook that as a core skill set for sure.
Hmm. I totally agree. This is the main thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is you're very big advocates for cooking at home. And as we are a meal planning app. So we hope that people are meal planning and the end result of their meal planning is that they're cooking meals at home for various reasons. But one of the biggest ones is saving money. And, going out to eat right now, just, it's for me, it's just me and my husband, but we might spend as much on one meal out as I would spend for an entire week at the grocery store.
Mhm.
And I think I liked you mentioned this comment of like personal inflation. I don't remember exactly the phrase that
Lifestyle
you used.
inflation.
Lifestyle inflation. Yeah.
Lifestyle inflation. And it almost feels like going out to eat is a big area where you can have lifestyle inflation. You're like, we're making more money now. Let's go out to eat more. Let's treat ourselves more. And not realizing that you could end up spending literally like thousands of dollars every month by going out to eat frequently.
Literally, literally. And it's hard because the way that we're taught to categorize our budget and the way that we're taught to view going out to eat as a treat kind of hides the fact that it's thousands of dollars on a monthly basis. Like people don't necessarily see it. They just assume we're like, that's just the cost of entertainment or that's just the cost of food. And it's like, no, that's the cost of your decisions to
Yeah.
eat a certain way. And as soon as you can break that habit, as soon as you can break that thought pattern, you really start to understand where you can claw back and capture some of that budget and still have the same level of happiness, satisfaction, and fullness with your meals.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to eating at home, do you think that there needs to be a focus on specifically budget-friendly recipes or budget-friendly meals? Or do you think that just cooking at home, people are automatically going to save a ridiculous amount of money?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I would say the latter. In fact, I'm not a big fan of focusing on cost savings as at the center of your meal planning. I think enjoyment and the contribution or the connection between what you're cooking and its connection to your overall wellness should be central to what guides your decisions to cook. We shouldn't be headed straight to whatever's on sale and buying 10 of those things and letting that dictate what sets the tone for our nutritional needs for however long it takes you to bang through that inventory. And so, I also think that taking that approach contributes to what feels like a sense of punishment that so many people attribute to the idea of cooking at home, right? We just talked about, people being accustomed to spending hundreds of dollars per meal while they're eating out. And in many cases, looking at that as like a badge of honor. I can afford to do that. We make enough money. This is something that makes our life easier and it's fun. It's more convenient. But there's a lot that you're missing out on, when you don't learn how to prepare a simple meal at home. And oh, by the way, a lot of the things that we're eating at home, a lot of the things that we're eating out in restaurants can very easily be replicated. And if not, can in many cases even be made better at home. But I think so many of us kind of see it as this far off goal and it's something that they could never do on their own. And I just hope to inspire more people to think differently about that. And obviously it helps when they have tools that make the obstacles seem more achievable.
Mm-hmm. Talk about this actually with one of my coworkers quite a bit because we try to source a lot of the meat that we get locally. We live like right on the edge of a city, so like have access to more like rural, farm area. And I have a really hard time going out to eat for like a steak dinner nowadays because the beef that we get and I cook it and like I've cooked so many steaks at this point that I'm like, I kind of think I do it better than that.
You probably do.
You probably do. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. You can definitely replicate things, and sometimes I actually think that that's for me that can be a fun part of like going out to eat. We don't go out, we try not to go out to eat super frequently, but when I do, if we have something that's like, these like yummy, crispy Brussels sprouts or something, like I then try to figure out like, how can I make that at home? Because that was so
Yeah.
good. I want to have that more often. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that because I think that there's a lot of inspiration people can take from going out to eat and try to transfer into their home. But I know, Julian, you have experience working in restaurants and you have some culinary experience, but if somebody is struggling to learn how to cook, do you have any resources or tips for them?
I have tons of resources and tips. I will try to narrow them down really quickly in my head. I will say one of the tools I've been really pleased with over the last couple of months has been Any Day Cookware, which basically allows you to cook in the microwave.
Mm.
I think just personally, because I'm an 80s baby, I remember when my mom first got a microwave and how game changing it felt. But I also remember being very misled because it came with like a cookbook and there was a beautiful browned turkey or something like that on the cookbook. And everyone knows like you're not going to be able to do that in a microwave. But in my mind, because it was completely new technology, this is how they framed it up. But obviously, for the vast majority of people, it's a vessel that you use to reheat food. But with
Mhm.
this new cookware, I think it just unlocks, so many different things. And I think also makes it intriguing, but it's easy to clean and it's durable and it's affordable. And I think for me, like just, you know, anything that removes what many people think is an obstacle to getting over the hump of cooking more at home is a tip that I recommend. And so whether it's a tool like the Any Day or some other tool like a sous vide machine, which, is one that we use pretty often. We're using one tonight, in fact, to enjoy some steak for dinner. But, I would say if I had to say one thing, and most people do not like this, it's to purge. It's to purge. It's to get rid of all the things, all the promises that you made to yourself and the stuff that's sitting in the freezer that you said you were going to use. Like just clear the clutter. I think we're so accustomed to clutter in our freezers, clutter with tools
Spices.
and spices. Like
Mhm.
you spend a weekend getting rid of the things that you just know you're not going to use. And then all of a sudden, I think the overwhelm is just sort of lessened. And now when you look in your refrigerator or in your pantry, I think it's a lot easier to see what things you can pull together, what the possibilities are, versus seeing a bunch of reminders from things that you tried that one time and never tried again. So
Mhm.
get rid of those things. They're probably stale anyway, or donate them to someone who can actually use it or who's actually looking for it, or sell it, make some quick cash if that's what you need to. But I think once you do that, it creates a bit of a fresh start. And I think that helps a lot of people say, all right, now I I can't feel overwhelmed because I only have the things that I really, really want. And I think it just makes your life a lot easier.
Mm. I think that's a great tip. And I also could say related to that is purge some of these unnecessary appliances that people
Oh my
have.
Oh
gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has an Instant Pot and an air fryer and a whatever. But if you never have used those things or they feel way too complicated, it's not worth having them around. Your mind isn't going to change one day and you're going to say, today's the day that I'm going to master the Instant Pot if you haven't already done it in the 3 years that you've owned it.
Right.
So
Yes.
I think similarly, you could get rid of the things that you don't use when it comes to like kitchen gadgets and just stick to the ones that you feel are your tried and true methods that help you actually make dinner possible.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
guilty as charged, by the way, because I fell into the hype only because we were trying to inspire more people to cook. And I went out and I bought an Instant Pot. And Kirsten can tell you, I probably used it twice. And then I held on to it because I said, well, if nothing else, it'll be like a soup warmer if we
Yeah.
have people over for Thanksgiving. But even then, I just serve it right out the pot. And so I don't have to ever use it. It's been sitting in the garage for a couple months. So I'm probably going to give it away before the end of the year.
Yeah, Kirsten made some eyes at you right there.
Yeah, because I've tried to give it away. We've done several purges, and I was the one who was guilty of buying all of the gadgets. When we moved in together, he went through my pantry and my kitchen, and he was like, "Why do you have like these?"
5 different ways to peel garlic.
Yeah, and it's
It's
like,
like
"Well,
all
these
these
were on
colors.
sale. This one was yellow. This one, I had a bunch of reasons and
Yeah.
excuses, but you're absolutely right. We don't understand or we underestimate how much that drag just further creates friction between us in the kitchen. Like if you have to go through and find a bunch of stuff, you obviously feel overwhelmed instead of just looking at a pot, a pan, uh, you know, tongs, whatever it
Yeah.
is, and knowing that you can put together something quickly.
Yeah, your kitchen should not feel like the junk drawer,
Right.
right? The junk drawer should, if you have one,
Everybody has.
all right,
Right.
well, it's one drawer, hopefully, but the entire kitchen shouldn't feel that way. And I think that's what contributes to why so many people just avoid cooking altogether.
Right. So you mentioned the sous vide, which I am not personally very familiar with. I do not think most people would think that that's like a simple, just because of the name, I think, French
Mm.
fancy
Yeah.
sounding name. Can you talk a little bit about how you think that's a good tool for somebody who's more of a beginner?
Yeah. So first of all, I remember the very first time I saw sous vide, and I felt the exact same way. And this was years ago, before it was basically, an affordable kitchen appliance. I mean, it felt like a motor that you would clip onto the back of a giant container, but it was not like an actual appliance by any
Right.
means. But I think the sous vide, it's basically just a device that regulates certain temperatures. The specific one that we have is the Joule by Chef Steps, or maybe it's the other way around, but one of those things, maybe both, one of those brands or sub brands. And it's connected to your phone via Bluetooth. And what I love about it is more than just the fact that it allows me to cook a steak, but even like tonight, we're having a steak. I can prepare that steak, put all the seasonings into the bag, and have it ready to go. And it will hold at the perfect temperature for up to like 3 or 4 hours. And
Mm.
so, as a busy entrepreneur, working father, like that just opens up so many opportunities. Like I'm not, chained to the kitchen. And I still know that all I need to do whenever I come home is zip it out of the bag. It's going to be the perfect mid rare. And all I need to do is give it a quick touch in a scorching hot cast iron pan, and my steak is essentially ready. There's no real worry about it overcooking or being undercooked. It will literally be perfect every single time. And that goes for chicken or pork loin or tenderloin or whatever it is, lamb, whatever it is that you want to do. And so I think just from a standpoint of ease, because a lot of us are just busy in our lives, and you want to do laundry, but you also want to have a really nice dinner. It's very difficult to do both because maybe you haven't perfectly timed something, but there's certain things that are so time sensitive, it locks you and keeps you there, which means you can't do anything else. And that's also discouraging. And so it just adds a level of ease to your life that I think um, allows you to still enjoy really nice meals at home without fear of overcooking something, which I think is a huge plus. But on top of that, it is absolutely excellent at reheating foods. And so we do a
Mm.
good bit of batch cooking as well. And so if I smoke a pork shoulder, for example, I'm not going to eat all 10 pounds of that thing, but I will break that down, make tiny vacuum sealed packs. And if I'm ready to just dump that in a pot of water that's regulated above, let's say 165 degrees, or if I happen to smoke a couple of racks of baby back ribs and they're frozen in a vacuum sealed bag, I can literally take it straight from the freezer in a frozen state, dump it into the water bath. And because it's been vacuum sealed and because the warming up with the sous vide is such a gentle process versus something like the microwave, which is pretty like aggressive zapping in a short period of time, it tastes just as good, if not better, the second time around. And I don't want to get too technical, but I think part of it is because it's vacuum sealed and it almost kind of creates like a confit kind of effect where all the juices, all the flavors are still in there. And so if you can wrap your head around a soup being more delicious the second day, I think the same effect kind of happens when they're using the sous vide as a reheating tool. And I think all of those things, I think, just make cooking at home more rewarding. It doesn't make it feel like, oh, this is a punishment. It's not as good. as what I would get if I just decided to spend the money and go out in a restaurant. I mean, once you start to have a preference, but also are pretty clear on understanding that what we make at home is like definitively better than what we could buy at a restaurant, it just starts to compound and compound. And all of those things, I think, just make cooking at home that much more of a pleasurable activity.
Hmm. I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's just a time saving thing, because I do think that time is one of the biggest barriers for people who are wanting to start cooking at home. Maybe they have cooking skills, but they're just so busy. And then it becomes a challenge of like, well, what's the thing that I give up in order to be able to have time to cook? Inevitably, any recipe that says it's like a 30-minute recipe or a 20-minute recipe, I've never experienced a recipe that only takes me 20 minutes.
Right.
Right. It assumes you've already done the prep
Pretty
and
much.
washed
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
cleaned the sink
Exactly.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's probably why people are starting to gravitate more towards like meal kits and the like HelloFresh and those kinds of things. What's your guys' opinion on the meal kit trend that's happening?
I used to be pro meal kit because I am someone who is very intimidated in the kitchen. And that felt like a paint by numbers exercise where it's like, okay, well, they've already got it measured out and sent. But over time, I think people have started to do the math on those meal kits and they're pricing the inconvenience of buying individual ingredients at a grocery store or doing a full meal plan for the week instead of having one sent to you. And the economics just didn't work anymore. And so I think there's a way to recreate that on your own. It does require a little more work, but at the end of the day, you have ingredients that you know that you'll use again. You have foods that you know that you can eat again. You have recipes that you know that you can tweak. And so it's one of those things where it's like you slow down to speed up later. And it's a very hard concept to wrap your head around, especially as Americans, but it's very similar to investing or saving or any of these other things that we do for our long-term benefit. There is a lot of benefit in just taking the time to learn how to do it to your preferences, to your appetite levels, to whatever's going on, your dietary needs or desires. There's a huge benefit in learning how to do that yourself and figuring out how to create your own meal kit, so to speak, in
Hmm.
your pantry. Like, what are your essentials? What are the things that you weave in and out? And what are the treats? From there, you should be able to create at least 10 to 12 basic meal items that can roll you through a month, you know? So,
Yeah, we tried it very early on in our relationship. And I was actually excited because I think it, for me, relieved the pressure of trying to come up with something new.
mm,
It was great to know that, oh, there's something that I would have never made on my own. And the ingredients were all here. So that from that standpoint, I thought it was pretty cool. But I was surprised uh, at how technically sound of a cook, how experienced I thought you'd have to be. I didn't think
yeah,
what they were
that was the other
asking
thing.
people to do
Was simple.
was simple.
Yeah.
And even if it had like, I think it was like a star system. I don't remember which brand it was, but it was
I think it's just
considered
fresh.
simple. And I was like, I wouldn't consider this simple because, and again, I was learning from her as someone who is not nearly as experienced as I am. I was like, yeah, if you can't do this and you're really trying and you watch me cook all the time, and so you're kind of learning that way. Like it felt like it actually, there were some underlying assumptions about how difficult or how skilled of a cook you needed to be in order to actually replicate some of those dishes. So that was my experience. And that's part of the reason why we decided to go in another direction. But I'd be curious to try it again for the same reasons, because, why not switch it up? Because there's certain things that I likely would not buy on my own. But yeah.
Well, now it's evolved. Like now you can get cooked meals to your doorstep or
Mm-hmm.
even frozen meals to your doorstep where you're not assembling and cooking, you're just reheating it. And I think that's a great model for people who are on the fence where it's like, try the baseline of that, or even just shop your frozen food section and go beyond just your standard grocery stores. We love our Asian market. What is it called?
No,
Namdae Moon. But you might have an H Mart in your area.
Mm-hmm.
But like the frozen food game has completely changed.
Yeah.
Technology has improved frozen foods. Like we're beyond the hungry man plates. You can get an amazing like dim sum or ramen or even, pasta. You can get all these things in your frozen food section now, and they're flash frozen. Like they're not like crusty and dehydrated. Like it's actually good. And so I think between frozen foods, ready-made meal kits, if you're on the fence around time, if you're struggling with time, you've got all of these different options, but I wouldn't go all in on any single one of them. I would just do like the base level and plan to fill in any gaps on my own.
That's a great tip. I think that we had a similar experience with the meal kits where I actually thought that it wasn't saving us any money because a lot of times the meal kit is just giving you food for dinner. So like
Yes.
the big claim is like you don't have to go to the grocery store. Everything's just sent to you to your house. And I was like, but I still have to go to the grocery for breakfast and lunch, you
Yeah.
know?
And fruit and bananas and like
Yeah. And so, yeah,
herbs.
to me, it was like, I don't actually see the time savings necessarily of this because I still have to go to the grocery store. So I'm still spending time doing that. And then cost wise, it was like, I think the price per meal was actually not as inexpensive as I could do it myself for, like a similar meal. And I really liked that you talked about, just learning to create your own method and doing it yourself. And we like to say around here that like do your future self a favor, put some of the hard work in now and you're going to reap the benefits of that later. That's how we always think about meal planning. Do you guys do your own meal planning? I know you mentioned kind of like you talked about having your staples at home that you can make meals with, but what does that look like in your house?
I've never actually fully described the process before, as much as we've spoken about money and food, but we've certainly not spoken that much about the meal planning. But for me, it starts with the menu. I think I take the approach similar to that of a chef, which is that I start with whatever it is I'm making, which is in part inspired by what we want, what might be different from what we've had the prior day or week before, what might be in season to a certain extent. And then that dictates what the shopping list is. And we go for those things. You add in a couple of other staples and things that you just have to keep on hand because we also have a son and he doesn't eat all of the things that we eat. And then that's essentially what it looks like. I write the menu directly on the refrigerator. And so the 3 or 4 things that we have in there or that I'm cooking for the day are literally written there with a dry erase marker. And to the right of that is the shopping list. We have our own unique printable, which is like fruits and vegetables. And then here's all the bulk items you need to buy. Here's all the dry goods. Here's frozen. Here's meats and proteins. Here's drinks, cold brews, or beverages and things of that nature. And then on the bottom, it's just like where I would write out the actual menu, sort of duplicating what's on the refrigerator with like a little note section. So just remember that, just making it up. Maybe we've got to get something for our son's little league team. And so you want to add these things to the list. Yeah, I go to the grocery store maybe at my grocery store of choice right now. I would say for the last year and a half has been Aldi. I've been really pleased with how they have improved the quality. I know the first time I walked into an Aldi a few years ago, I walked out immediately. I was like, after someone recommended it, and I was like, no, this is not it. Sorry, it does not meet my standards. I'm leaving. But they've made a lot of improvements over the last couple of years, so that's been great. But I do that once, maybe twice a week. And then I go to Costco. We joined Costco exactly a little about a year ago, I would say. And that has been something that we do once every 4 to 5 weeks.
Okay, so talk to me about Costco because I'm kind of opinionated on Costco. I also have a Costco membership. I have a very small house, so I don't have room to like store, 20 pounds of something.
Yeah.
But so I go kind of infrequently. But I think that Costco can be often misleading in the savings. A lot of
Mhm.
the times I feel like I can actually get better prices at the grocery store. And it takes a little bit of digging to like look at the different apps and be like, oh, what's it here and what's it there? But yeah, so give me your take on Costco. What are some of the things that you feel like are actually a good budget buy at Costco?
For me, it's not really so much about the budgeting. It's about limiting the amount of reps that I need to leave the home and go
Mm,
grocery shopping. So if I didn't go to Costco, I don't believe I would be able to say that I only go to Aldi once, maybe twice a week. I would likely have to end up going to Aldi 3, maybe 4 times. And certainly I would not have the flexibility to buy options that we consider like quick meals. And so,
Mm.
just having the option to just cut open a bag of chicken tikka masala because I don't feel like making it from scratch. And admittedly, I haven't quite mastered how to make it as well as what I can pre-purchase. And so between the option of that and then having to order it from our local Indian restaurant, if I have this as a acceptable option. So for me, it's more so around the convenience that it offers. And there are certain products that we do just actually enjoy. Like there's snacks and nuts and extra virgin olive oil and honey and things of that nature. But I certainly don't shop and just go down the aisle and pick up, 3 pounds of pickled, you know, asparagus and okra and things like that, just because it's a gourmet item that's on sale. That's not how I shop at Costco. It's in most cases because I'm buying certain things in bulk, like chicken breasts and coffee, all of these kind of bulk shelf stable items. On occasion, we'll buy us some meats, but that just depends on if I feel like and have the time to actually put something on the smoker. But now that I do a lot more batch cooking, and I've still got room to grow, but I do a good bit of batch cooking, Costco plays a role in helping me kind of buy certain things. But to your point, I would say, if there are savings with respect to the meats versus what I can get at Aldi, in some cases, I have greater success with better quality in certain products that I can get at Costco than I can get at my local Aldi. But to me, they go hand in hand, and I'm indifferent in some of the things that I choose to buy at Costco versus buying at Aldi.
Hmm. That's a good perspective on it, I think, is realizing that maybe it doesn't always have to be about the budget shopping. You guys already mentioned that you're not super concerned about the budget shopping, but sometimes it's just really about the conveniencing and like maximizing your time can sometimes actually be the more important part of the
Hmm.
process.
Hmm.
And sometimes not going to a store as frequently is the budget hack that you need. Like
For
there
sure.
are a lot of disciplined people who can stick to their list, but there are a lot of people and grocery stores are designed to
Yes.
intrigue you to buy things that you didn't necessarily have on your list, but you can find room to eat this week or you want to try. And so staying out of them is a hack for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Speaking for myself.
So this episode's going to go live right around the holidays. And so I'm curious if you guys do have any tips for those like big holiday meals. They can be very expensive meals. Do you have any tips for people to try and maybe stick to a budget for those meals? Or is maybe your mindset is the opposite of that? But I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, we have a love-hate relationship with tradition that require big, expensive meals that end up getting thrown away. And so our biggest tip is to cook what people
Mm.
like don't feel boxed into a menu. Don't feel this pressure to send everybody home with extras. And don't feel hesitant to ask people to pitch in. Like the rules have changed. There have been all of these guidelines and traditions that have put the pressure on like one single person or one single household to host. And it's a new day. It's just like weddings where you can make the rules yourself. You can go non-conventional. You can have tacos if that's what y'all want to do on Thursday. Like the turkeys go on sale 2 days later. So you can have it on another day. You can have a Friendsgiving. Like I would encourage people to treat it as a creative exercise instead of trying to find a way to make what everybody is going to get work within your budget. Like that's just anti the laws of supply and demand. That's anti-capitalism. Like it's just very, very hard to do that. It's very hard to put something that everybody wants within this budget. You can try, but your effort might be better used on a creative exercise that just allows you to focus your energy somewhere else.
And I will also say this, I completely agree with what she just said, but I feel like the allure of the traditional meal has been eroded by all these work potlucks that happen. Like for me, it almost felt like I remember when I was a kid and I used to love those meals because I didn't grow up in a, traditional American household. So we didn't enjoy them very often. But as I got older and I started to look forward to those meals, but then I realized that there were so many people like having Thanksgiving dinner, like, you know, plate for plate, same things like at the potluck. To me, that just kind of spoiled it. It wasn't really special anymore because I can't say it had been a year
Since you
since
had
I'd had
cooking.
this. I had it
Yeah.
last Thursday at the company potluck, and it wasn't even really that good. And so it just kind of took away from the whole point of it all. And so, yeah, I think because of that, what we found is that you find that a lot more people are far more open to skipping it altogether. And if anything, they would love to try something different because it does kind of feel like the same thing. Because you're not just having it once, you're probably having that meal 3 or 4 times, and it starts like the week prior to the actual event. So break the rules. Don't be afraid to break tradition. And I think you'd be surprised that there are a lot of people who are on board with that.
And go internationally, like for your inspiration, not like literally.
Right.
Not saying like get on a plane, but look internationally because I think people are far more open if it's something that they haven't done or there's some novelty or a theme to it. So something as simple as like a ramen bar, which, the materials are not expensive. The ingredients don't have to be expensive, or a taco bar or different variations on rice and beans. Like you can have a lot of fun with budget meals just by theming it up and adding some layer of novelty or celebration. It doesn't always have to be about the Pilgrims and the Mayflower and like the initial meal that we shared with the native. Like it doesn't have to be that. It's a holiday about Thanksgiving and gratefulness and gratitude and community. And so like just play with that theme.
I love that take on it so much. My husband has always said, cooking a turkey one day a year doesn't make any sense anyways, because nobody knows how to do it. You'll only do it once a year. It
Exactly.
rarely ever turns out amazing.
Exactly. We should do Thanksgiving together.
You should just buck the system because everybody wants to eat, New York strip or something instead. Anyway.
Exactly.
And it's so much better. We
Yes.
just started hosting it at our house a couple years ago. We used to go to my mom's house every single year, and she's getting older, and you could just tell her heart wasn't in making the big feast, but she would still try every year, and it would just create this system where you're hungry after you eat, and you don't want the leftovers the next day.
And
Like you're ready to get out the house.
And if we're being honest, she's probably using the same seasonings
Year after year.
that she had when you were a kid. And we don't even think about it.
Yeah, she's not using cumin
So
any other
not
time.
only are we just using, cooking this thing once a year, just so to your husband's point, you don't have an opportunity to learn or improve on what you may have messed up the last time. It's not like, any other thing that we prepare. But we don't oftentimes rotate out those seasonings anyway. And so it does degrade over time, and it kind of takes away from the experience. So yeah, I say buck the whole thing and, make it your own. I think make it your own, whatever it is that you want, agree on that, and focus on what really matters, which is spending quality time with people you love.
Yeah, that's great. Was there anything that we missed that you guys really wanted to talk about today related to eating at home?
No, this was great. We haven't done a food podcast episode in a long time, and this felt good. We probably need to revisit that.
Well, why don't you guys just remind everybody the name of your podcast, the name of your book, where they can connect with you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, if you want to stay connected with us, we are on just about every social media platform with the exception of TikTok under @RichAndRegular. Our website is richandregular.com. You can go on there and sign up for our newsletter. We also have a YouTube channel where we have a unique digital series called Money on the Table, which is a combination of Julien cooking or us visiting local restaurants and then having a really interesting conversation about money. So check that out. And we look forward to connecting with some of your listeners.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to check out that YouTube series. That sounds awesome. Well, thanks again
Thanks
for
for
joining
having
me.
us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. There are links in the show notes to connect with Julien and Kiersten and to listen to their podcast as well as to buy their book. I really hope that you guys go and learn some more from them because they are so much fun. I have really enjoyed listening to their podcast. They are so energetic, and I had an amazing time talking to them today for that exact same reason. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. Please share it with a friend. And thanks again for listening. I'll see you again in 2 weeks.